Buongiorno, everybody. It's been a little bit. Excuse my voice a little bit as I am feeling a little bit under the weather, but we're going to have a Total Warhammer 2 replay. I'm only playing as Beastmen, my favorite aggressive faction, versus the mighty pirates, the zombie pirates. It's the Vampire Coast, and they're going to run me for my money in terms of how I build. So in terms of my setup, or my army, I ran very aggressive vanguard positions. I have 4 units of Goreherd. Now, Goreherd are units that are just anti-chaff. Really high weapon damage at 36, high melee attack at 41, high speed, good leadership so they don't run away, and I believe they are immune to psychology as long as they are above, their leadership is above. So if they, near the beginning, they can't get terror routed, it's okay. These are pretty good matchup against the chaff of the Vampire Coast, mainly because it just kills them extremely quickly. Have to have some archer core. I'm going to have 4 units of Ungor Raiders. Bring some of that missile damage in just in case he brings large units. It's very useful. Even though they don't have armor piercing, it's very powerful in mass volleys. I'm going to have some Ungor Spearmen. They did get buffed, if you guys remembered. They do have Vanguard deployment, and Spears just are so good at tying up enemy units that I almost never don't want to bring them. The Spears are always just fantastic. And to back up my lines, I do have Senegors. 2 Senegors. I bring the normal versions here because a lot of the roster of the Vampire Pirate units, they don't have that much armor. Only really the crabs. And in those cases, when versing crabs, you might as well have all the armor piercing or none, because being in the middle is just like, you're not going to deal any damage to that crab. 2 units of Harpies to get into the back lines. Now, I think these units are so powerful. They punch really hard at 44 weapon strength and really good melee defense. They just take a long time to take out. And the fact that they're flying is just so much backline pressure in just a large unit that you essentially have to deal with at all times. Especially, it's really hard to deal with these, considering these are considered small entities, and halberds actually won't do too well against them. So I have a pretty powerful, very aggressive force. How will I deal with a very powerful crab force? And that's really 1 unit, and that's Minotaurs with great weapons. These are essentially one of the best anti-large units in the game. Anti-large, no force penalty, armor piercing, super high power weapon strength at 110 each. And it's just with 12 models, if they get slapping on those crabs are going to be running back to the Krusty Krab because they're going to want a burger. I'm going to have 1 unit of Senegor great weapon, so I do have a little bit more anti-large. But like honestly, I actually brought the Senegors with great weapons to deal with depth guard. Because this unit essentially just, while they don't have much armor, they'll deal a lot of damage on a rear charge against the depth guard. But my opponent, on the other hand, which is quite dangerous, is bringing a very different board. Back to introduction. I did bring a Brave Shaman Wild because increasing vigor is very important in the Beastmen roster. You need to have the increased aggression going at it, never stopping. Increased vigor from the spells is very powerful indeed. And of course, the mighty Morgar the Shadow gave. Summoning Chaos Spawn is just fun, and having a lore that cannot die is also fun. So, unless you bring Archaon the Everchosen, which can kill Morgar, and that's about it. My opponent is going to give me the Bamboozle. A front line of zombie pirate deckhand mob, everyone expects that, that's why I bring the Goreherd. What I don't expect is 1, 2, 3 units of crabs, and one of them being the mighty crab, the super crab, along with Silastra Direfin on it. So bringing the lore of the deep here, which is very powerful when you bunch up your units, because she has an ability called Song of Enthrallment. Where is it? No, where? Okay, she didn't bring Songs of Enthrallment. That's interesting. But that's a little mistake from my opponent in this case, but you should definitely bring abilities that reduce the melee attack because you tend to group up very heavily. Now I'm going to 2 units of the pirate gunnery mob on Promethean crabs, and one of them being the Lamprey's Revenge, so they do have regeneration, so that's just so much damage. And just a lot of chaff in the back, including the Tide and the Depth Guard. Now, the Depth Guard are probably going to be my biggest issue in combination with the crabs. The crabs hold the line. The Depth Guard kill my units. And how will I deal with this? Because look at my... I deployed holding the high ground. I was expecting a camping build of some sort. I did not expect the crab build, so I have a very, very wide line. But Beastmen don't have too much of a problem of retreating. I'm going to take away that unit card real quick, and I do the best thing that Beastmen are known for, and that's just getting out of here. I do not want to deal with this. They're going to take some shots in the back from those crabs, but I realize my opponent has actually very little ranged firepower in this case. A few pistol shots from the Lamprey's Revenge, a few pistol shots from the gunnery mobs on the crabs, and I'm going to full surround my opponent. So it's going to be very dangerous for him. Something you really don't want to happen to you. So I'm going to have my Senegors coming around on this flank. I'm going to move back, and I notice, wait, I have a cliff over here. Can I shoot my arrows into this? And I'm like, hey, Ungor Raiders, loose. Now, I am going to be firing at the deckhand mobs here because they are unarmored and don't have shields. I could fire into the crabs, but the armor will negate way too much of the damage. So I'm going to make sure my opponent has very low health chaff. A few more gunshots going off. Not too much of an issue, and I just have the movement speed advantage. He's going to get some shots off, but I do have shields on the normal Centaurs. And I'm going to have a full surround, and I keep my Minotaurs with great weapons in check. I want to make sure if he extends any of his units, he is going to get punished. And look at those nice archer volleys into the sides of the polearms. A few of them hitting the depth guard, so I'm getting value from these archers already. And he's just chasing. Now, you guys remember, I hate Wood Elves. I hate Wood Elves with Waywatcher builds. And in a sense, I'm doing the same thing in terms of kiting, but I don't have completely overpowered archers that can run forever, and I don't have Wild Riders. So overall, you're going to have to forgive me for this kind of playstyle, because let's be honest, running into this gauntlet of units is a death trap. So I do see a overextension here. The crabs, the Lamprey's Revenge, are like, hey, we can chase these Ungor Raiders. Yeah, no. Here comes the anti-large armor-piercing fighting power of the Minotaurs. They get a rear charge into the back of the crabs, and that's going to spread doom for these crabs. A lot of power. Look at that. Just a small engagement, 10% held off. They do go back, as I remember, you do not want to fight these chaff unless with the appropriate units. Gore herds are the appropriate units. They will shred these units, and I'm going to make sure that I only use these Minotaurs with weapons as an anti-large tool. Now, Silastra is going to push forward straight through the lines, but I have spears waiting, and we're going to have his spread out. He's spread thin. His units, his main army is over here taking pelting fire, and my archer line over here is dealing everything that makes it into the battlefield. But Silastra is by herself. She is going to have a summon of Damned Knights. It's one of her amazing abilities. Oh, and she's not using the Damned Knight, she's using the Rotting Promethean. So it's a holding unit, which is acceptable in this kind of case. But look at what's attacking her. It's the Minotaurs along with spears. Now, if you want any combination of units fighting large units, spears plus Minotaurs with great weapons is just about the worst way you could go. It's so efficient towards large units. You really don't want to be fighting this. But Celestia does have pretty cool animations as she slams the amazing, oh, there goes my spears. I believe they are terror routing here. Yes, they are. But my Minotaurs are just fine. Song of Enthrallment does go down, so I was not incorrect into that. But I do use a spell of my own from the wild, Mantle of Gorok, which reduces armor by 30, but increases melee attack and armor-piercing damage so much that it's just insane. Like, look at this. 154, 57 melee attack. The high melee defense of Silastra cannot deal with this heavy, heavy pressure. I am going to bring the Harpies, not to deal damage, but to pin her in. This is the biggest problem with Silastra being here. I need to make sure she stays here so I can deal some damage. Now, the Knights Errant are going to be summoned in, but they're not cycle charging. They're not doing the job they need to be doing and harassing backline units. My Chaos Spawn now with Orisa being de-summoned already, we're holding back the entire enemy force while I have a rear engagement over here, which is not the best for my infantry, especially against depth guard, but he is so bunched up, and I fully surrounded him with archer fire at some point. So my beast shaman doing really well, 40 kills, which is nice, and it's just the ability to raise everyone's vigor. My units are not nearly as tired. Look, this unit is fresh indeed. Like, having 4 minutes into the game, 5 minutes, and having fresh units is just something the Beastmen are just, you can't have anywhere else. Another summon going in to try to hold Silostra in. The Harpies will go back, and I am firing some more archers, but Morgar the Shadowgave, along with all my anti-large power, is going to take down this mighty, mighty beast. Goodbye, Miss Crabbo. Your song of enthrallment cannot stop the mighty units of this the Minotaurs. Minotaurs are just so good. So much power in one unit. If you can kill an enemy Beastman's like Minotaur unit, they're done. You can essentially throw your large units anywhere you want, and unless they have like other Minotaurs, or maybe Chaos Spawn, you're going to have some trouble. With the leadership out of the way, it's really just the crabs left, and I'm going to have some rear charging, reduce their leadership, make it so that they start to crumble. But Harpies just, they won't do anything. They will deal almost little to no damage. I'm just dealing with the summons that Silostra has left behind. And over here in the whole death corner, I am losing. I actually lost this little area. Everyone's routing away. I do get a few spells off. A little too late, of course. He's going to taunt my units. But the last bastion is a vampire fleet captain of vampires. So, like, bringing healing into the case. So, not just the Lore of Deep. But it is a Death Star at this point. It's very hard to kill crabs. Crabs have super high melee defense, and you need to whittle them down slowly but surely, but I think I've been doing that pretty effectively. My arrows have been flying very consistently. In fact, most of my Ungor Raiders are out of ammo, with one exception right here. This one had a hard time getting a nice shot into the opponents, but Morgar the Shadowgave is going to be in here. I have 100% confidence that Morgar will not die, because Morgar is one of the most unkillable gods in this game. He may not be as famous as Archaon the Ever-Chosen, but he might as well have the lasting power, because the only people that can kill him are Archaon himself and possibly Felix, right? From the Felix and Gotrek with his flaming sword. But all these arrows hit these little crabos, and to no real avail. I'm assuming here that the most damage I'm actually doing to these units is because they're crumbling. Crabs are just so ideal for holding the line. Lamprey's Revenge still regenerating, mind you. But with the full pressure of arrows and my units starting to come back, it's a game. My Minotaurs did rout, but the power of the Gore Herd, and Morgan honestly could end this by himself, having a duel with the Vampire Fleet Captain, and that's going to be a game. Alright, let's look into some unit statistics as I get a drink of water, as my throat isn't feeling as great as it should be. Now, my opponent, Hydra Senpai, really great, actually. I really liked the unit choices of the Zombie Pirates, some Zombie Pirate polearms, just in case I go with Centaur, rear charges, and the Tide is always fantastic, of course, and Silostra and the Vampire Fleet Captain, yeah. I can't really fault my opponent for anything. This is a Crab Rush build in all its valor, and it almost got me, I would say. It really surprised me, but using the ability to outposition, because Beastmen have such quick infantry, Beastmen can always bring it back. 44 kills on the Minotaurs of Great Weapons. These are essentially my only anti-large unit that could get the job done to kill Silostra. And the second they killed him, I think it was game over for him. Because Silostra, if Silostra took out, it was a game of counters, right? If he got halberds into Minotaurs, or if he got guns, something that was very missing in his roster was at least a few gun units to get shots, because Beastmen do not have armor. Just the simple 300 gold zombie pirate deckhand mob with just pistols can destroy a unit of Minotaurs with no real issue for them. So he needed to find a way to kill Minotaurs. I needed to find a way to kill the crabs. The Minotaurs found the crabs died. And of course, the chaff he brought all evaporated under the heavy pressure of the Gore Herd, while I get value from my Ungor Raiders, firing into the chaff, making sure they die faster. Bray Shaman of Wild, making sure everyone's topped up on vigor, and Morgar the Shadowgave just surviving and not being sniped. Because if they brought, like, Lord Harkin, Luther Harkin, on a Terrorgeist and started sniping my leadership, Morgar the Shadowgave it's probably the best choice in terms against the Vampire. the Vampire Coast. So yeah, overall pretty happy with my choices. I did have backline pressure with the Senegors. Senegors with great weapons did make it into the Depth Guard, but Depth Guard, remember, they were the biggest threat to me because they destroy any infantry that I have. They destroy Harpies and they destroy Minotaurs, even though they don't have an anti-large bonus. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this game, and pretty fun game for my opponent. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you guys later.